You must marry me. Hopeless back virgin secretary forced to marry a ruthless CEO, speechless on wedding night. The room went silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic 40 floors below. Lillian's hands shook as she opened the folder again. The numbers blurred together, but the reality was crystal clear. Have you ever loved someone you were supposed to hate? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She was signing divorce papers when he walked in and said the three words that changed everything. I love you. But it was too late. The marriage that started as a business deal had already destroyed them both. What she didn't know was that he'd been protecting her from a truth that could kill her. Have you ever been trapped in a lie so deep that the truth became your enemy? Have you ever loved someone you were supposed to hate? Been forced into a situation where your heart betrayed your mind? This is the story of a woman who thought she was selling her freedom, only to discover she was buying her salvation. But the question that will haunt you is this: when love grows from deception, can it ever be real? Hit that subscribe button because this story will make you question everything you think you know about love, loyalty, and the price of survival. Let me take you back to the moment when a simple secretary's life became a high-stakes game she never asked to play. She was invisible until the day her boss decided she was the only woman who could save his empire. Lillian Price had mastered the art of disappearing. 24 years old, coffee in one hand, stack of reports in the other, she moved through the gleaming halls of Harrington Industries like a ghost in business casual. Nobody looked at her twice. Nobody remembered her name. And that's exactly how she preferred it. The 52nd floor conference room stretched like a courtroom, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Manhattan skyline like a jury of steel and glass. But Cole Harrington's eyes held more judgment than the entire city below. "Sit down, Miss Price." His voice cut through the morning air with surgical precision. Cole Harrington didn't ask, he commanded. At 32, he'd built an empire through ruthless calculation and zero tolerance for weakness. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit cost more than most people's cars, and his reputation for destroying competitors was legendary. Lillian clutched her notepad tighter. "Did I do something wrong, Mr. Harrington?" "Wrong." A smile played at the corner of his mouth, but it held no warmth. "No, Miss Price, you did something right. You stayed invisible long enough for me to notice exactly what I need." Her stomach dropped. In 3 years of working here, he'd never spoken directly to her. She filed his papers, organized his schedule, fetched his coffee, all through his assistant. She was furniture to him. Useful, forgettable furniture. "Your mother," he continued, sliding a manila folder across the mahogany table. "Rosa Price, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Treatment costs estimated at $400,000. Insurance won't cover experimental therapy. You have approximately 6 months before." "How do you know that?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "I know everything about my employees, Miss Price. Especially the ones I'm about to make an offer they can't refuse." The folder contained medical records she'd never shared with anyone. Her mother's diagnosis, treatment options, costs that had been keeping her awake for weeks. Numbers that represented the difference between life and death. "What do you want?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Cole stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "I'm being bought out. Hostile takeover. Shareholders are nervous about my personal life." Apparently, a 32-year-old bachelor CEO is considered a liability. Too unpredictable. Too many risks. "I don't understand what this has to do with." They want stability. A family man. Someone who appears to have something to lose. He turned back to face her, his dark eyes boring into hers. "Your mother needs surgery she can't afford. I need a wife I can trust. We both get what we need, Miss Price. The question is, how badly do you want to save her?" The room went silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic 40 floors below. Lillian's hands shook as she opened the folder again. The numbers blurred together, but the reality was crystal clear. "You're asking me to marry you." "I'm not asking, Miss Price. I'm offering a business arrangement. Your mother gets the best medical care available. You get financial security. I get a wife who won't cause complications. What kind of complications? For the first time, something flickered across his controlled expression. Something almost vulnerable. The kind that happen when emotions get involved. This is business, nothing more. Lillian thought about her mother lying in that hospital bed, too proud to admit how scared she was. About the second job, she'd been working nights. The third job she'd applied for that morning. About the medical bills that kept coming even though they'd already taken everything. What would I have to do? Marry me. Attend company functions. Look happy. Convince the board and the public that Cole Harrington is a stable, committed family man. His voice dropped to a timbre that made her pulse race despite her fear. The contract will specify everything, including appearances. Appearances? A marriage has to look real, Miss Price. In every way that matters to outside observers. The weight of his meaning settled over her like a heavy blanket. Physical intimacy, shared living arrangements, public affection, whatever it takes. She stared at him, this man who held her mother's life in his hands like a business proposition. He was handsome in that cold, untouchable way that belonged on magazine covers. But his eyes were calculating, measuring her desperation against her usefulness. What would you do if a stranger offered to save your family in exchange for your entire life? Have you ever felt so desperate that impossible became possible? Share your thoughts below. How long? She whispered. 1 year minimum. After that, we can reassess based on business needs. And if I say no, Cole's expression didn't change, but something in the room shifted. Then you say no. No consequences. No judgment. You walk out that door and continue your life exactly as it was yesterday. The unspoken truth hung between them. Her mother would die, and there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it. Lillian looked down at the contract he'd placed beside the medical folder. Her name was already typed in the appropriate spaces, waiting for her signature, as if he'd known what her answer would be before she did. As she stared at the marriage contract, one clause caught her eye that made her blood freeze. The marriage must appear authentic in all respects, including physical intimacy. When she looked up, Cole's dark eyes were watching her reaction. And for the first time, she saw something that terrified her more than his coldness. Hunger. 3 days later, she was walking down an aisle toward a man who owned her signature, but not her heart. Yet, the whirlwind began immediately. Professional shoppers, hairstylists, wedding planners who spoke in urgent whispers about timeline compression and absolute discretion. Lillian felt like a doll being dressed and posed by strangers who treated her upcoming nuptials like a military operation. Smile, dear. The photographer's assistant held a light meter inches from her face. Natural bride glow. Think happy thoughts. Happy thoughts, right? She was 24 hours away from marrying a man she'd spoken to exactly 3 times in 3 years. And everyone kept talking about her special day, like this was some fairy tale romance instead of the most expensive business transaction of her life. The historic mansion's garden bloomed with white roses and jasmine, Spanish moss draping the ancient oaks like wedding veils. But beneath the southern charm, tension crackled like summer lightning. Cole had chosen Savannah, Georgia, for their wedding. Romantic, he'd explained to the wedding planner. Traditional, the kind of place where love stories happen. But when he looked at Lillian, his eyes held no love story. Only the cold satisfaction of a man checking items off a list. You look beautiful. His voice came from behind her as she stood in the bridal suite, staring at herself in the antique mirror. The dress was perfection, silk and lace that probably cost more than her yearly salary. But the woman wearing it looked like a stranger. Thank you. She turned to face him, and for a moment, something passed between them. He looked genuinely struck by her appearance, his usual control slipping just slightly. You clean up pretty well yourself. Cole's tuxedo was flawless, custom-tailored to his athletic frame. He could have stepped off the cover of a magazine. But it was the way he was looking at her, like he was seeing her for the first time, that made her breath catch. Are you ready for this? Does it matter? The honesty surprised them both. We're here. The guests are here. My mother thinks she's watching her daughter marry for love. Maybe she is. Before she could ask what he meant, a soft knock interrupted them. 5 minutes. called the wedding coordinator. Cole stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. Lillian, her name, sounded different in his mouth. Less like a business associate, more like something else. Whatever happens out there, whatever people say or think, you're not alone in this. The ceremony blurred together like scenes from someone else's dream. The music, the flowers, the faces of Cole's family and business associates watching her with curiosity and judgment. His mother, Margaret Harrington, had arrived that morning with barely concealed disapproval, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Such a sudden romance, Margaret had commented during the rehearsal, her tone suggesting sudden romances were slightly less respectable than sudden infections. But when the minister asked Cole to lift her veil, time slowed to a crawl. His hands were steady, gentle, as he revealed her face to their audience. And when he leaned down to kiss her, their first real kiss, something unexpected happened. It was supposed to be for show, a performance, but his lips were warm and soft against hers, and he didn't pull away as quickly as politeness required. The kiss lingered, deepened just slightly, and when he finally lifted his head, his eyes held surprise that matched her own. The reception was a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. Business associates pumped Cole's hand and told him how lucky he was. Society wives air-kissed Lillian's cheeks and whispered behind their fans about the speed of the courtship. But it was Victoria Caldwell's entrance that turned whispers into open stares. She swept through the garden like a vengeful goddess in emerald silk, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled, her smile predatory. Cole's ex-fiancée, the woman everyone expected him to marry before Lillian Price appeared from nowhere. "Cole, darling." Victoria's voice carried across the reception like breaking crystal. "I simply had to congratulate you on your interesting choice." The crowd parted as she approached, guests sensing drama like sharks scenting blood. Cole's hand found Lillian's waist, pulling her closer to his side. "Victoria." His voice held warning. "How thoughtful of you to come." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it." Victoria's eyes raked over Lillian from head to toe, cataloging every detail with surgical precision. "Though I have to say, I'm curious about the rush. I mean, we've all heard the rumors about why successful men marry their secretaries so suddenly." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Lillian felt every eye in the garden turn to her, waiting for her reaction. She could shrink back, let Cole handle this, play the protected little wife. Instead, she stepped forward. "You're right," Lillian said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "There are rumors about why powerful men marry quickly. Usually it's because they've found something real enough to fight for, instead of something convenient enough to settle for." Victoria's perfect composure cracked just slightly. "How quaint." "I think so too." Lillian smiled, linking her arm through Cole's. "Sometimes the best things in life come when you're brave enough to choose authenticity over expectation." Cole's grip on her waist tightened, and when she looked up at him, she saw something new in his eyes. Respect, maybe even pride. Have you ever had to defend your place in someone's life? When was the last time you felt completely out of your element, but had a fake confidence? Drop a comment about your most challenging performance. As the last guest departed, Cole took her hand and led her toward the bridal suite. "Now comes the hard part," he said, his voice rough with something she couldn't identify, making this look real. But when he closed the door behind them, she realized the hardest part wasn't pretending to love him. It was pretending she didn't. The wedding night that was supposed to be business became the moment she realized her heart had signed a different contract than her mind. Moonlight streamed through the antique lace curtains, casting delicate shadows across the four-poster bed. The room that should have felt like a prison began to feel like a sanctuary. Cole loosened his tie, his movements mechanical and efficient. He'd shed his jacket and was working on his cufflinks when he noticed her standing frozen by the window, still in her wedding dress. "You can use the bathroom first," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Take your time." "Cole." She turned to face him, and something in her tone made him stop what he was doing. Why did you really choose me? I told you. I needed. No. She stepped away from the window, closer to him. You have a dozen female employees. Women who are prettier, more sophisticated. Women who would jump at the chance to marry Cole Harrington, even temporarily. Why me? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Because you've never once looked at me like I was a prize to be won. He set down his cufflinks and really looked at her. Do you know how rare that is? In my world, everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. But you, he shook his head. You avoided me. Actually tried to stay invisible. Do you have any idea how refreshing that was? So you married me because I ignored you? I married you because you're the only woman I've met in 10 years who didn't see dollar signs when she looked at me. His honesty was raw, unguarded. And because when I ran a background check, I discovered you've been working 3 jobs to pay for your mother's care, never missed a day of work, never asked for help, never complained. You have character, Lillian. Real character. That's rarer than beauty in my experience. The distance between them seemed to shrink without either of them moving. What happens now? Now we figure out how to share a space without destroying each other. Cole began unbuttoning his shirt, then stopped when he saw her expression. Unless you prefer separate rooms? I could tell people you're feeling overwhelmed. Need time to adjust. No. The word came out more forcefully than she intended. I mean, we agreed to make this convincing. Separate rooms on our wedding night would raise questions. It would. She moved to the vanity, began removing her jewelry with trembling fingers. I need you to understand something. This isn't something I take lightly. Cole's hands stilled on his shirt buttons. Are you saying you haven't? I'm saying I've never been in a position where intimacy felt like an obligation. She met his eyes in the vanity mirror. And I need to know that whatever happens between us, it's because we both want it, not because of some contract clause. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just behind her chair. In the mirror, she could see his face, the careful control warring with something deeper. Lillian, his voice was rough. Look at me. She turned to face him, her heart hammering against her ribs. This doesn't have to be just business, he said, his hands coming up to frame her face. Not if you don't want it to be. The kiss was nothing like their public performance at the altar. This was slow, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, her hands fisting in his open shirt. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Are you sure? He whispered against her lips. Instead of answering with words, she reached for his shirt buttons, finishing what he'd started. Her fingers were steady despite the thundering of her heart. Cole lifted her onto the vanity, his hands gentle but certain as they found the hidden zipper of her wedding dress. Is this okay? He whispered against her skin. Yes, she breathed, surprised by how much she meant it. He undressed her like unwrapping something sacred, each touch asking permission, each kiss a question she answered with sighs. When he lifted her and carried her to the bed, she felt beautiful instead of nervous, desired instead of obligated. Their first joining was slow, careful, full of whispered reassurances and gentle exploration. But what surprised her wasn't the physical intimacy. It was the emotional connection that came with it. The way he watched her face, responded to her needs, made sure she felt cherished instead of used. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I didn't marry you to hurt you, Cole admitted, his forehead resting against hers. But I need you to understand. If this fails, I lose everything my family built. And you might lose more than your mother's medical bills. What do you mean? His expression darkened. There are people who don't want this merger to fail quietly. People who profit from chaos, who see weakness as opportunity. Marriage was supposed to make me appear stable, but it also makes me U.S. targets. The word sent warmth through her chest, even as his warning chilled her blood. What does it mean when someone treats your vulnerability as strength? When they see your surrender as courage? Tell me below if you felt that rare connection. As they drifted towards sleep in each other's arms, 3 words formed in her mind that terrified her more than anything she'd ever faced. By morning, she was gone, leaving nothing but the indent of her head on his pillow. But Cole's phone buzzed with a message that made him go rigid with terror. "They know," was all it said. "Know what?" She asked sleepily, but his answer chilled her to the bone. That this marriage is real now, and that makes you a target. She thought marrying a CEO meant luxury and security until she discovered that wealth comes with enemies who play for keeps. The penthouse apartment overlooked Central Park like a glass tower of privilege. But Lillian couldn't shake the feeling that the floor-to-ceiling windows made them visible to anyone who might be watching. 3 days of marriage had taught her that Cole's world came with rules she didn't understand and dangers she couldn't see coming. "Don't go near the windows after dark." Cole's voice cut through her thoughts as she stood admiring the city lights. "And don't establish any routines. Vary your path to work. Change your coffee shop. Never go anywhere alone. You're scaring me." "Good. Scared keeps you alive." He moved to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. His hands were steady, but she was learning to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened when he was calculating risks. "My father died in a car accident when I was 25. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses, perfectly maintained car, suddenly lost control on a road he'd driven 1,000 times." The implication hit her like ice water. "You think someone killed him?" "I think my father was 3 days away from exposing a money laundering operation that would have brought down half the Fortune 500. Cole's voice was flat, emotionless. "I think he got too close to something that powerful people needed to stay buried." Lillian sank into the leather chair across from him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because yesterday, someone hacked our security system. Today, my accountant found irregularities in 3 different subsidiary accounts. And tonight, he pulled out his phone, showed her a text message. Pretty wife. Be ashamed if something happened to her." The words blurred as her hands started shaking. "What do we do?" "We survive." Cole's voice turned hard as steel. "We make this marriage so publicly successful, so politically valuable, that hurting us becomes more expensive than tolerating us." The next morning brought their first real test. Cole's business partner, James Mitchell, arrived for breakfast with his usual easy smile and 20 years of shared history. But Lillian noticed how Cole's posture changed when James entered the room, how his laughter never quite reached his eyes. "So this is the famous Mrs. Harrington." James's handshake lingered just a moment too long, his eyes assessing her with uncomfortable intensity. "Cole certainly knows how to keep secrets." "Some secrets are worth keeping," she replied, moving closer to Cole's side. "Indeed they are." James's smile sharpened. "Though I have to admit, I'm curious about the timeline. Such a whirlwind romance. Almost like you both had urgent reasons to marry quickly." Cole's hand found the small of her back, a possessive gesture that sent heat through her despite the circumstances. "When you know, you know. How romantic." James's tone suggested romance was slightly distasteful. "Well, I hope you're prepared for the scrutiny, Lillian. Being married to Cole means being married to the business, and business can be demanding." That afternoon, Cole had to leave for an emergency board meeting. "Stay in the apartment," he ordered, kissing her goodbye with an intensity that suggested it might be their last. "Don't answer the door for anyone. I'll be back by 6. At 5:30, she heard the key in the lock. "You're early," she called, moving toward the foyer. But it wasn't Cole who entered. James Mitchell stood in her living room like he belonged there, his smile pleasant and his eyes cold. "Hello, Lillian. We need to talk. How did you get in here?" "I have a key. Cole and I share everything, you see. Business interests, security codes." His voice dropped to something darker. "Sometimes even personal property." Fear shot through her, but she kept her voice steady. "Get out." "Oh, I don't think so." James moved closer, backing her toward the windows she'd been warned to avoid. "See, you've created a problem for me." Cole was supposed to stay focused on business. Controllable, predictable. But this marriage thing, this sudden emotional attachment, it's making him unpredictable. "He's not attached to me, isn't he?" James laughed, and the sound made her skin crawl. "The way he looks at you?" The way he touches you? The way he's already changed the beneficiaries on his life insurance? Oh yes, Lillian. He's attached. The penthouse that had felt like a castle now felt like a fortress. Every shadow hiding potential threats. Every delivery requiring security clearance. Love was becoming a luxury they couldn't afford until they realized it was their only weapon. When Cole returned to find James gone and Lillian shaking by the window, something primitive and dangerous flashed in his eyes. What did he say to you? That you change your life insurance. Among other things, Cole's voice was deadly quiet. What else? That loving me was making you unpredictable. That it was bad for business. She looked up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. Is it true? Do you love me? Instead of answering, he kissed her with desperate intensity, backing her against the wall with a passion that bordered on violence. Their coupling was fierce, almost angry, as if they could claim each other through sheer physical force. Does that answer your question? He growled against her throat. My father built this company to leave something lasting, Cole confessed while holding her close afterward. But someone wanted him gone, and now they want me gone too. I married you to protect the company, but now I need to protect you from the choice I made. Have you ever been in a situation where protecting someone you cared about put them in more danger? What would you do if love became a liability? Comment below with your thoughts. The envelope slipped under their door contained a single photograph. Lillian's mother entering the hospital for treatment, with a red X marked over her face. The message was clear. His enemies had found his weakness, and her name was Lillian Price Harrington. She thought the hardest part was convincing the world their marriage was real until she had to convince the one person who knew her heart better than anyone. The hospital room felt smaller with Cole in it, not because of his physical presence, but because of the way he seemed to absorb all the available emotional space. Rosa Price lay propped up in the narrow bed, her dark eyes sharp despite the pain medication, studying the man her daughter had suddenly married. So, Rosa said, her accented English carefully measured, "You're the miracle worker." "I'm just a man who wants to help," Cole replied, pulling a chair close to her bedside. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Price?" Like someone who's lived long enough to recognize a transaction when she sees one. Rosa's directness made Lillian wince, but Cole's expression remained calm, almost amused. "You raised a remarkable woman. That's not a transaction, that's a gift. Gifts don't come with contracts, Mr. Harrington." Lillian held her breath. Her mother had always been able to see through pretense like looking through glass. If anyone could detect the business arrangement underneath their marriage, it would be Rosa. Cole was quiet for a long moment, then did something that surprised them both. He took Rosa's weathered hand in both of his, speaking to her in careful Spanish he'd clearly been practicing. "Señora Price, su hija es más fuerte de lo que ella misma sabe. No vine aquí a salvarla. Vine aquí porque ella ya había salvado todo lo que importaba." Rosa's eyebrows shot up. Lillian's Spanish was rusty, but she caught enough to understand. "Mrs. Price, your daughter is stronger than she knows. I didn't come here to save her. I came here because she had already saved everything that mattered." "Where did you learn Spanish?" Rosa asked, switching back to English. "I hired a tutor 3 weeks ago. Thought I should be able to speak to my mother-in-law in her first language." 3 weeks ago. Rosa's voice was thoughtful. That's interesting timing. The modest hospital room transformed when Cole entered, not because of his expensive suit, but because of the way he took Rosa's weathered hand in both of his, speaking to her in careful Spanish he'd learned just for this moment. "Mija," Rosa said to Lillian when Cole stepped out to take a business call. "Come here." Lillian moved to her mother's side, dreading the questions she knew were coming. "You love him." It wasn't a question. Rosa stated it like she was commenting on the weather, matter of fact and undeniable. "Mommy, it's complicated. Love is always complicated. That's how you know it's real." Rosa gripped her daughter's hand with surprising strength. "But the question is, does he love you back?" "I don't know." "I do." Rosa's eyes were knowing. "Mija, I've seen men lie before. But when he looks at you, his eyes don't lie. The question is, do you trust your heart enough to believe what you see?" Later that evening, Back at the penthouse, the conversation with her mother replaying in her head, Lillian found herself watching Cole differently. The way he moved through their space, the way he unconsciously made room for her, the way his eyes tracked her movements even when he was focused on work. "Your mother doesn't trust me," he said without looking up from his laptop. "She doesn't trust anyone when it comes to me." "Smart woman." Cole closed the laptop, giving her his full attention. "What did she tell you?" Lillian hesitated, then decided on honesty. "That love doesn't always start with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with choice, grows with respect, and becomes something beautiful through patience." Something shifted in Cole's expression. "And what did you tell her?" "That I'm still figuring out the difference between gratitude and genuine feeling." Cole stood, crossed the room to where she sat curled in the reading chair. "Want to know what I think?" "I'm not sure." He knelt beside her chair, bringing them to eye level. "I think gratitude is what you feel when someone does something for you. But what you and I have, this isn't about what I did for you. It's about who we are when we're together." His words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. "Show me," she whispered. Their kiss was different this time, less desperate, more exploratory. When he lifted her from the chair and carried her to their bedroom, every touch was deliberate, reverent. He worshipped her body like he was memorizing it, like she was something precious he couldn't quite believe he was allowed to have. "I can't promise this won't get dangerous," he said afterward, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare back. "But I can promise I'll fight for you. For us. Even if it costs you everything. Especially then." What did your mother teach you about recognizing real love? Have you ever had someone see your relationship more clearly than you did? Share your mother's wisdom in the comments. As they left the hospital the next day, Rosa pressed something into Cole's palm. A small silver cross she'd worn for 30 years. "For protection," she whispered. "You're going to need it." Her words proved prophetic when they arrived home to find their penthouse door standing wide open, and everything had changed. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were plotting against you the entire time? 3 weeks into their marriage, Lillian thought she had figured out the rhythm of living with Cole. Morning coffee together, shared glances across business meetings, late-night conversations that lasted until dawn. But trust? That was still fragile, hanging by threads she didn't know were about to snap. She was organizing Cole's home office when she found the envelope, hidden between quarterly reports, sealed but not addressed. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were photos of her, walking to work, visiting her mother, sitting alone in Central Park. Someone had been watching her for months, long before Cole's proposal. The attached note made her blood freeze. "Your wife knows nothing. Keep it that way or she dies. JM." Lillian, Cole's voice startled her from the doorway. "What are you doing?" She held up the envelope, her voice barely a whisper. "Someone's been following me." "Who is JM?" For the first time since she'd known him, Cole looked genuinely afraid. He crossed the room in 3 quick steps, snatching the photos from her hands. "You weren't supposed to see this." "Weren't supposed to see what?" "Cole, what's going on?" He sat heavily in his leather chair, running his hands through his dark hair. "James Morrison, my former business partner. We had a falling out 2 years ago over some questionable investments." "What kind of investments?" "The kind that could send us both to prison." Cole's eyes met hers, filled with regret. "I tried to get out, but James threatened to destroy everything. My company, my reputation, my family's legacy." Lillian's heart pounded. "So you married me to protect yourself?" "No." Cole stood up, reaching for her hands. "I married you because James was going to hurt you to get to me. The medical bills for your mother? I was already paying them before I proposed." The room felt like it was spinning. "You've been lying to me from the beginning. I've been protecting you from the beginning." Cole's voice was desperate now. "James Morrison isn't just a corrupt businessman, Lillian. He's dangerous. The FBI has been investigating him for money laundering, but they need evidence I don't want to give them." "Why not?" "Because it would implicate me too." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Lillian stared at this man she'd been sharing a bed with, wondering how much of their connection was real and how much was performance. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we stick together. Because if James thinks our marriage is fake, he'll use you as leverage against me. But if he believes we're really in love, are we? The question escaped before she could stop it. Cole stepped closer, his hand cupping her face. That's the one thing that isn't complicated, Lillian. What I feel for you is the most real thing in my life. But before she could respond, the lights went out. In the darkness, she heard Cole curse under his breath, then the sound of glass breaking downstairs. "They're here," he whispered, pulling her toward the bedroom safe. James just made his move. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? Stay tuned to find out how far Cole will go to protect the woman he loves, and whether their marriage contract can survive when bullets start flying. Nothing tests a marriage like someone trying to kill you both. Cole's hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling weapons from the hidden compartment behind their bedroom mirror. "Stay low, stay quiet, and do exactly what I tell you." "Cole, what is this?" Lillian whispered, watching him load a pistol like he'd done it 1,000 times. "This is what happens when you try to leave the wrong business." He handed her a bulletproof vest. "Put this on. Now." The sound of footsteps echoed from downstairs. Heavy boots. Multiple men. Professional. "How many?" Lillian asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "Sounds like 4, maybe 5. Cole checked the window. Black SUVs. Military gear. James isn't playing around. A voice called out from below. "Cole Harrington. We just want to talk." "Sure they do," Cole muttered. He turned to Lillian, his eyes intense. "There's a fire escape on the north side. When I give you the signal, you run. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you." "Lillian, this isn't a discussion." "No, it isn't." She grabbed his arm. 3 weeks ago, you asked me to trust you with everything. Now I'm asking you to trust me. We're in this together." For a moment, Cole just stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression. Surprise, admiration, maybe even pride. The front door exploded inward. "Moo!" Cole grabbed Lillian's hand, leading her toward the back stairs. Behind them, voices shouted orders, boots pounded on hardwood floors. They made it to the kitchen before the first shot rang out. The bullet shattered the window above the sink, sending glass cascading onto the marble countertop. "Kitchen window," Cole whispered. "Fire escape is 10 feet to the right." But as they reached for the window latch, it opened from outside. A masked man started climbing through. Lillian didn't think. She grabbed the cast iron skillet from the stove and swung hard. The man dropped like a stone. Cole stared at her in amazement. "Remind me never to make you angry." "Save the jokes for later," she said, already climbing through the window. The fire escape was old, rusty, and definitely not designed for 2 people in evening clothes. But it held as they climbed down to the alley below. "Car keys?" Lillian asked. "In my jacket. Upstairs." "Great." She looked around the dark alley. "So what's the plan?" Before Cole could answer, headlights flooded the alley. A black sedan screeched to a stop, and James Morrison stepped out, flanked by 2 more men. "Going somewhere," James called out, his voice echoing off the brick walls. "We haven't finished our conversation." Cole stepped protectively in front of Lillian. "Let her go, James. This is between us." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong." James smiled, and it was the coldest thing Lillian had ever seen. "Your lovely wife here is the key to everything. You see, Cole, I know about your little FBI problem, and I know the only way you stay out of prison is if certain evidence disappears." "What evidence?" Lillian whispered. "The kind that could put us both away for life," Cole admitted quietly. James laughed. "Didn't tell her about the murders, did you, Cole?" The word hit Lillian like a physical blow. "Murders? How do you process learning that your husband might be a killer while someone's pointing a gun at you?" Keep watching to see if love can survive when the truth comes out. Some secrets are worth dying for. Others are worth killing for. Murders? Lillian's voice was barely audible. "Cole, what is he talking about?" James Morrison's smile widened. "You didn't tell her about Seattle, did you? About the warehouse fire that killed 3 witnesses." "That wasn't me," Cole said through gritted teeth. "And you know it, but you helped cover it up. Same difference in the eyes of the law." Lillian felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. The man she'd been falling in love with, the man who made her laugh and held her close at night. Was he a murderer? Cole, she whispered. Tell me he's lying. The silence stretched too long. They were going to testify against James, Cole finally said. Money laundering, drug trafficking, human trafficking. I found out James was planning to kill them, so I tried to help them disappear. But James got to them first. And you said nothing? I said nothing because he threatened to kill my sister. Then you. James clapped slowly. Touching story. But here's the problem. The FBI thinks Cole set that fire. And in about 10 minutes, they're going to arrest him unless he gives them what they really want. Which is? Lillian asked. Me? James pulled out his phone. But I have a better idea. Cole, you and your beautiful wife are going to disappear. Permanently. Then I'll tell the FBI you both died in a tragic accident. That's when Cole moved. He grabbed Lillian and dove behind a dumpster just as James's men opened fire. Bullets ricocheted off metal and brick, sending sparks flying in the darkness. Stay down, Cole shouted over the gunfire. When I count to 3, we run for that doorway. Cole. 1. More bullets. The acrid smell of gunpowder. 2. Lillian gripped his hand tighter than she'd ever held anything. 3. They ran. Lillian had never moved so fast in her life, her designer heels clicking on the pavement as they sprinted across the alley. She could feel bullets passing inches from her head. They reached the doorway, but it was locked. Dead end. James called out, walking slowly toward them. Literally, Cole pulled Lillian behind him again. I'm sorry, he whispered to her. For all of this. Cole. The shot rang out, but it wasn't James who fired. It was someone from the rooftop above. James Morrison dropped to his knees, clutching his shoulder, his gun clattering across the pavement. Red laser dots appeared on the chests of his remaining men. They raised their hands slowly. FBI. Everyone on the ground. Agent Sarah Chan dropped down from a fire escape, her weapon trained on James. Cole Harrington, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice. Wait, Lillian stepped forward. He was protecting me. Ma'am, please step back. But as the agents moved in, Cole caught Lillian's eye. He mouthed something she almost missed. Trust me. Then he was gone, disappeared into federal custody while she stood alone in an alley, still wearing her bulletproof vest and wondering if their marriage was over before it really began. Sometimes the people trying to save you look exactly like the people trying to destroy you. What happens when you can't tell the difference? Ever wonder what it's like to be married to a ghost? 2 days after Cole's arrest, Lillian sat in their penthouse apartment, staring at news reports that made her husband sound like a monster. Corporate CEO linked to Seattle warehouse deaths. FBI investigates money laundering ring. Harrington Industries stock plummets. Her phone rang constantly. Reporters, lawyers, people who claimed to be friends, but sounded more like vultures. She answered none of them. The only call she took came from her mother. Baby, are you all right? I don't know, Mama. I don't know anything anymore. Come home. Leave all this mess behind. But Lillian couldn't leave. Not yet, because 3 hours after Cole's arrest, an envelope had been slipped under her door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an address and a time. Pier 47. Midnight. Come alone. See, Cole was supposed to be in federal custody, so either someone was impersonating him, or what? She asked her reflection in the bedroom mirror. He escaped? He made some kind of deal. The woman staring back at her looked different. Harder. 3 weeks of marriage to Cole Harrington had changed her in ways she was still discovering. At 11:45 p.m., she stood at Pier 47, the Hudson River stretching out into darkness. The city lights reflected on the water like scattered diamonds, beautiful and cold. You came. Cole's voice came from behind her. She spun around. He looked different too. Tired, unshaven, wearing clothes she'd never seen before. How are you here? They arrested you. The FBI made me an offer. Testify against James Morrison, help them recover the stolen money, and I get witness protection instead of prison. Witness protection? The words felt like ice in her throat. That means I disappear. New name, new life, somewhere far from here. Cole stepped closer. But I couldn't leave without asking you something. The question hung in the air between them like a bridge she wasn't sure she wanted to cross. What? She whispered. Come with me. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of water lapping against the pier. Cole, I barely know you. 3 weeks ago, I was a secretary who'd never been outside New York. Now you're asking me to disappear forever. I'm asking you to trust me. Again, the last time I trusted you, people tried to kill us both. This time is different. Ow! Cole reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Because this time, I'm telling you everything. Every secret, every mistake, every reason why James Morrison wants us both dead. Lillian stared at the envelope. What's in there? The truth. All of it. Bank records, FBI reports, evidence that proves I was trying to stop James, not help him. Cole's voice was steady, but she could see his hands shaking. Read it, then decide if you think I'm worth saving. And if I don't come with you, then you never see me again. The FBI gives you a new identity too, just to be safe. But we live separate lives forever. Lillian took the envelope, her fingers brushing against his. The contact sent electricity through her entire body, reminding her of every kiss, every whispered conversation, every moment she'd felt truly alive in his arms. How long do I have to decide? 48 hours. Then I'm gone either way. As Cole disappeared back into the shadows, Lillian realized she was crying. But whether from fear or relief or something else entirely, she couldn't tell. When someone asks you to trust them with your entire future, how do you know if they're your salvation or your destruction? The truth has a way of changing everything, even when you think you're prepared for it. Lillian spent the next day locked in their apartment, reading every document Cole had given her. Bank transfers, FBI surveillance reports, hospital records from Seattle showing the 3 murdered witnesses were actually alive, living under new identities in federal protection. James Morrison had lied about everything. The warehouse fire was real, but it had been set by James's men to destroy evidence. Cole had gotten the witnesses out first, then helped the FBI fake their deaths to keep them safe. For 2 years, he'd been working undercover, gathering evidence against his former partner while James thought he was covering up murders that never happened. He saved them, Lillian whispered to herself, staring at a photo of 3 smiling families in their new homes. He saved them all. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number, Pier 47. Now, they moved up the timeline. See, Lillian's heart raced. It was barely noon. Cole had said she had 48 hours. Something was wrong. She grabbed her coat and ran for the elevator, her mind spinning with questions. Why the change? Had the FBI discovered something new? Was James Morrison making another move? The pier was crowded with tourists and lunchtime joggers. She searched the faces, looking for Cole's familiar profile. Instead, she found Agent Chun. Mrs. Harrington, I need you to come with me. Where's Cole? That's what I need to talk to you about. Agent Chin's expression was grim. James Morrison made bail this morning. He's disappeared, and we have reason to believe he's targeting both you and your husband. But Cole's in protection. Your husband left protective custody this morning, against direct orders. Agent Chin showed her a surveillance photo of Cole walking out of federal building. He's trying to draw Morrison away from you, but he's putting himself in extreme danger. Lillian felt her world tilting. Where would he go? We were hoping you might know. Mrs. Harrington, your husband loves you. It's written all over every report my agents filed. He's not thinking clearly because he's trying to protect you. So what do I do? Agent Chin hesitated. This is highly irregular, but we think Cole will reach out to you. When he does, you need to convince him to come back into custody. It's the only way we can keep you both alive. That's when Lillian's phone rang. Cole's voice was tight with urgency. Lillian, don't go home. Don't go to your mother's. James has people watching everywhere. Cole, where are you? Somewhere safe for now, but I need you to know something. Whatever happens next, the last 3 weeks have been the best of my life. You made me remember what it feels like to be human. Don't talk like this is goodbye, because it might be. James Morrison just made me an offer. My life for yours. And Lillian, I'm going to take it. The line went dead. Agent Chun was watching her carefully. What did he say? He's going to trade himself for my safety. Where? Lillian closed her eyes, thinking of all their conversations, all the places Cole had mentioned from his past. Then she remembered Their first night together, he'd talked about a cabin in the Catskills where his father used to take him fishing. "I know where he is," she said. "And I know James Morrison will too. When love makes you willing to die for someone, how far will you go to keep them alive? Love makes you do crazy things, like driving 3 hours in the mountains to save someone who's trying to save you." Lillian sat in the passenger seat of Agent Chin's unmarked car, watching pine trees blur past the windows as they raced toward the Catskills. Her hands were clenched in her lap, her mind racing faster than the speedometer. "Tell me about this cabin," Agent Chin said, her eyes focused on the winding mountain road. Cole mentioned it once. Said his father took him there every summer when he was a kid. It's where he learned to fish, to shoot, to be quiet in the woods. Lillian's voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. He said it was the only place he ever felt truly safe. "And you think Morrison figured this out too?" James Morrison has been watching Cole for years. "If I could piece it together from one conversation, he definitely can." The radio crackled. "Agent Shun, we have eyes on the target location. One vehicle in the driveway. No movement. Copy that. ETA, 5 minutes." Lillian stared out at the darkening forest. Somewhere up ahead, the two most important men in her life were about to face each other. One who wanted to destroy everything she loved, and one who was willing to die to protect her. "Mrs. Harrington," Agent Chin said quietly, "when we get there, I need you to stay in the car. No matter what you hear. What if Cole's hurt? Then my team will handle it. You're a civilian, not a federal agent." But Lillian was already thinking about the gun Cole had taught her to use during their second week of marriage. Just for emergencies, he'd said, showing her how to hold it steady, how to breathe before pulling the trigger. She'd thought it was romantic at the time, a husband teaching his wife to protect herself. Now she realized it had been preparation. The cabin came into view through the trees. Small, rustic, with smoke curling from the chimney. It looked peaceful, like a postcard from a simpler time. But Lillian could see the black sedan parked next to Cole's silver BMW. James Morrison was already here. 2 minutes out, Agent Chin spoke into her radio. "All units in position." "Affirmative. We have the cabin surrounded." That's when they heard the first gunshot. Lillian's hand was on the door handle before Agent Chin could stop her. "That's my husband in there." "Mrs. Harrington, wait." But Lillian was already running toward the cabin, her heels sinking into the soft forest floor. Behind her, she could hear Agent Chin cursing and calling for backup. Another gunshot, then silence. She reached the cabin door and pressed her ear against the wood. Voices inside, muffled but angry. James Morrison's laugh, cold and victorious. Then Cole's voice, pain-filled but defiant. "You got what you wanted, James. Let her live her life." "Oh, but she's not going to live anything, my friend. Not when she knows what she knows." That's when Lillian realized the truth. James Morrison had never planned to let either of them walk away alive. Sometimes the only way to save someone is to risk everything. But what happens when everything might not be enough? There are moments when you discover exactly who you are. For Lillian, that moment came when she stopped being afraid and started being angry. She pushed through the cabin door like a woman with nothing left to lose. The scene inside made her blood freeze, Cole tied to a wooden chair, blood trickling from a cut above his eye, while James Morrison stood over him with a gun. "Ah, Mrs. Harrington." James smiled without turning around. "Right on time for the finale." "Let him go," Lillian said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I don't think so. You see, both of you know too much about my business operations. The FBI might have their witnesses, but they don't have the complete picture. Only Cole does. And now, unfortunately, so do you." Cole looked up at her, his eyes filled with regret and love in equal measure. "You were supposed to stay away. Well, have I ever done what I was supposed to do?" Lillian stepped further into the room, noting the layout, the furniture, the distance between herself and Morrison's gun. "Touching," James said, "but this reunion is short-lived. You're both going to have a tragic accident. Murder-suicide, perhaps." Distraught wife discovers husband's criminal activities, kills him in a rage, then takes her own life. "Nobody will believe that," Lillian said. They will when they find Cole's confession letter detailing how he murdered those witnesses in Seattle. Except those witnesses aren't dead, Lillian replied calmly. For the first time, James Morrison looked surprised. What did you say? I said they're not dead. The FBI moved them into witness protection 2 years ago. Cole helped save them, not kill them. Lillian took another step closer. You've been chasing ghosts, James, and building your entire revenge on a lie. Morrison's face twisted with rage. You're lying. Check the FBI files. Maria Santos, living in Oregon with her 2 kids. David Kim, teaching high school in Montana. Janet Rodriguez, running a bakery in Vermont. Lillian's voice was getting stronger with each word. All alive, all ready to testify against you. That's impossible. What's impossible is that you never figured it out, Cole said, his voice weak but determined. 2 years, James. 2 years you've been hunting me for murders that never happened. Morrison spun the gun toward Cole. You destroyed my life. No, Lillian said quietly. You destroyed your own life. Cole just made sure you didn't destroy anyone else's. That's what she made her move. While Morrison was focused on Cole, Lillian grabbed the heavy iron poker from beside the fireplace and swung it as hard as she could at Morrison's gun hand. The weapon flew across the room, firing wild and shattering a window. Morrison dove for the gun, but Cole had somehow worked one hand free from the ropes. He kicked the chair out from under himself and tackled Morrison to the floor. The 2 men struggled, rolling across the rough wooden planks while Lillian searched frantically for the gun. She found it under the couch just as Morrison broke free and lunged for her. FBI, everyone freeze. Agent Chun burst through the door, her weapon drawn, followed by half a dozen agents in tactical gear. Morrison raised his hands slowly, blood streaming from his nose. This isn't over, he said, looking directly at Lillian. Yeah, it is, she replied, still holding the poker. It really is. As the agents cuffed James Morrison, Cole stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving Lillian's face. You saved my life, he said quietly. We save each other's lives, she corrected. That's what married people do. When you find someone worth fighting for, you discover strength you never knew you had. 6 months later, Lillian stood in the kitchen of their new home in Asheville, North Carolina, watching Cole teach her mother how to make his grandmother's pancake recipe. The Witness Protection Program had given them new identities, but they'd chosen to keep their real names. Some things, Cole had argued, were worth the risk. More vanilla, Rosa, Cole was saying, his arm around her mother's shoulders. That's the secret ingredient. Secret ingredient is love, Rosa replied with a laugh. Everything else is just cooking. Lillian smiled, remembering how terrified she'd been 6 months ago about her mother meeting Cole under normal circumstances. Now, they acted like they'd known each other for years. The trial had been all over the news. James Morrison convicted on 12 federal charges, including money laundering, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Cole's testimony had been crucial, but it was Lillian's evidence, the documents she'd photographed in Morrison's office during their final confrontation, that sealed the case. You're staring, Cole said, appearing beside her with flour in his hair and a smile that still made her heart skip. Just thinking about how different everything is now. Different how? Lillian looked around their cozy kitchen at the morning sunlight streaming through windows they'd picked out together, at the life they were building from scratch. 6 months ago, I thought our marriage was just a business deal. Now I can't imagine my life without you in it. Cole set down his coffee mug and turned to face her fully. Lillian, there's something I need to ask you. Her heart stopped. What? We got married for all the wrong reasons. Legal protection, medical bills, keeping you safe from James. Cole took her hands in his, flour-covered fingers intertwining with hers. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about survival and started being about love. Cole, let me finish. He dropped to one knee right there in their kitchen, while Rosa pretended not to watch from the stove. I know we're already married. I know we've been through hell and back together. But I want to do this right. I want to marry you again, this time for the right reasons. Lillian's eyes filled with tears as Cole pulled out a simple gold band. Not the enormous diamond from their first wedding, but something beautiful and real and chosen just for her. Will you marry me, Lillian Price? Not because you have to, not because anyone's threatening us, not because of contracts or medical bills or witness protection. Just because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. The kitchen was quiet except for the sound of pancakes sizzling and Rose's quiet sniffling from the stove. Yes, Lillian whispered, then louder, laughing through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Again, as Cole slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, Rosa started clapping from across the kitchen. About time. Now come eat these pancakes before they get cold. Can't have a proper engagement without a proper breakfast. Later that night, lying in Cole's arms while rain drummed against their bedroom windows, Lillian thought about how strange life was. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. Cole, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too. I know, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. I've known since that first night, when you looked at me like I was worth saving. You were worth saving. We both were. 1 year after their second wedding, Lillian discovered that happiness was quieter than she'd expected, but deeper than she'd ever imagined. Their life in North Carolina had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Cole had started a consulting business, helping other companies clean up their financial practices. Lillian had gone back to school, studying business administration with dreams of opening her own nonprofit organization. Rosa had moved into the guest house behind their main home, claiming she wanted to be closer to her grandchildren, the 3 cats and 1 very spoiled golden retriever they'd adopted from a local shelter. You know what today is? Cole asked, setting a cup of coffee beside her laptop where she was working on a school assignment. Lillian looked up from her computer screen. Tuesday. It's the anniversary of the day James Morrison was sentenced. 1 year ago today, we officially became free people. She saved her document and closed the laptop. How do you want to celebrate? I have some ideas, Cole said, his voice taking on that tone that made her stomach flutter even after all this time together. Oh really? Instead of answering, he led her outside to their back porch, where she discovered he'd set up a candlelit dinner for 2. Nothing fancy, grilled chicken, fresh vegetables from their garden, and a bottle of wine from the local vineyard. Cole, this is beautiful. I wanted to do something special. To mark the day we stopped running and started living. As they ate, Lillian found herself thinking about their journey. The fear, the uncertainty, the moments when she'd wondered if they would survive. It felt like a different lifetime now, like a story that had happened to someone else. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The excitement, the danger, the life or death stakes? Cole considered the question seriously. I miss feeling like everything mattered so intensely. But I don't miss being afraid. I don't miss wondering if today would be our last day together. And now I get to love you without looking over my shoulder. I get to plan a future with you instead of just hoping we'll survive until tomorrow. Cole reached across the table and took her hand. Now I get to be bored with you. And it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Lillian laughed. Bored? Is that what this is? Wonderfully, perfectly, blissfully bored. No federal agents, no death threats, no secret identities. Just you and me and our cats, and your mother teaching me how to grow tomatoes. That night, as they cleaned up the dishes together, Lillian realized Cole was right. This quiet happiness was more precious than any adventure they'd survived together. Sometimes the best love stories aren't about dramatic rescues or life-threatening situations. Sometimes they're about choosing each other every single day in the small moments when nobody's watching and nothing's at stake except your hearts. Cole, she said as they headed upstairs. Yeah, I'm happy we're bored. Me too, Mrs. Harrington. Me too. 2 years later, Lillian stood in front of the mirror in their bedroom, adjusting the collar of her business suit and thinking about how much her reflection had changed. The woman looking back at her was confident, successful, and genuinely happy. She was also 3 months pregnant, though she and Cole were waiting until tonight to share the news with Rosa. Ready for the big day? Cole appeared behind her, straightening his tie. Today was the grand opening of the Lillian Price Foundation for Financial Justice, a nonprofit organization that helped people escape predatory loans and financial exploitation. Ready as I'll ever be, she turned to face him, marveling again at how good they looked together. Are you sure you're okay with this? Me using my maiden name for the foundation? Lillian, you were Lillian Price when you saved my life. You were Lillian Price when you stood up to James Morrison. That name represents everything brave and strong about you. Cole cupped her face gently. Besides, Harrington Industries still has some negative associations. Price is a fresh start. The drive to downtown Asheville was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The past 2 years have been a whirlwind of court appearances, therapy sessions, and building their new life together. But today felt like a real beginning. The foundation's offices were in a renovated building in the Arts District, with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls. Lillian had insisted on making it feel welcoming rather than institutional. Comfortable chairs, warm lighting, and artwork from local artists on every wall. Mrs. Harrington, Agent Sarah Chun appeared in the doorway, looking different in civilian clothes. I wanted to congratulate you on the opening. Sarah, Lillian hugged her warmly. Over the past 2 years, the federal agent had become something like a friend. I'm so glad you could make it. I wouldn't miss it. What you're doing here, helping people avoid the kind of financial traps that Morrison used to exploit, it's important work. Cole joined them, shaking Sarah's hand. Any word on Morrison's appeals? All denied. He'll be in federal prison for the next 25 years. Sarah's expression was satisfied. The 3 witnesses he thought were dead? They all testified at his final sentencing hearing. Turns out staying alive was the best revenge. As the day progressed, Lillian found herself surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by financial exploitation. Single mothers who'd been trapped in predatory loans. Elderly couples who'd nearly lost their homes to scammers. Young people drowning in student debt with no way out. This is what it was all for, she thought, watching her staff help a tearful woman understand her rights against a loan shark. All the fear, all the running, all the uncertainty, it led to this moment. That evening, at their celebration dinner, Rosa raised her glass. To my daughter, who turned her pain into purpose. To my wife, Cole added, who taught me that sometimes the best way to heal from being a victim is to make sure nobody else has to be one. And to new beginnings, Lillian said, placing her hand on her still flat stomach. All kinds of new beginnings. Later, after they'd shared their pregnancy news with Rosa, who cried happy tears and immediately started planning the nursery, Lillian and Cole sat on their back porch, watching fireflies dance in their garden. Do you think we'll tell our children about James Morrison? Lillian asked. Someday, when they're old enough to understand that sometimes bad things happen to good people, but love and courage can overcome almost anything. Lillian leaned against Cole's shoulder, feeling their baby growing inside her, and thinking about the future they were building together. I love our story, she said. Even the scary parts? Especially the scary parts. They're what made us who we are. As they sat together in the warm North Carolina evening, Lillian realized that their story wasn't really about corporate conspiracy or federal witnesses or dangerous men with guns. It was about 2 people who found each other in the worst circumstances and chose to build something beautiful together. Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories start with the most ordinary people. All it takes is someone willing to fight for what matters most. And that, my friends, is how a marriage contract became a love story that lasted a lifetime. Cole and Lillian's foundation went on to help over 10,000 families escape financial exploitation. Their daughter, Rosa Marie Harrington, grew up knowing she was named after the grandmother who taught her parents that love is the secret ingredient in everything worthwhile. James Morrison served his full sentence in federal prison. The 3 witnesses he'd tried to silence all testified at congressional hearings that led to major reforms in financial crime prosecution. But the real victory wasn't in the courtrooms or the headlines. It was in the quiet moments. Cole teaching their daughter to fish at the same cabin where he'd almost died, Lillian expanding her foundation to help women in abusive relationships, Rosa becoming the kind of grandmother who spoils her grandchildren with homemade cookies and unconditional love. Their marriage started as a business transaction, but it became proof that sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the most unexpected places. What did you think of Cole and Lillian's journey? Have you ever had to trust someone completely when your life depended on it? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed their story. Remember to subscribe for more incredible true stories of love, survival, and second chances. Until next time, keep believing that your own love story might be just one brave decision away. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.